terribly upset. I wanted to find that son of a bitch sound man, tie his testicles to a pulley and fly him to the rafters. I was so pissed off, I wanted to take one of my hosiery off, fill it with horse manure, and smash it in that moron bastard's face. And I said, thank you. That's all I had.
What did she say then?
Well, then she moved on to the next person. She said, I think that young man has mental issues. It's amazing to think that you and I have toured all over the United States doing this show. Although at Steve's age, he doesn't really tour, he just kind of wanders off, you know. But we catch him, and we bring him back. Steve, I was telling everyone how sometimes you wander off, and then we catch you and bring you back.
You know, Marty and I have not only, by the way, we have been together so long, we can actually finish each other's careers. We've not only worked together, we've also vacationed together. For years, we'd go with our families during kind of New Year's, go to St. Bart's, you know, fabulous sort of beautiful island, and we would go there. And when you first started going there, it was just a funky little. I was over there 25 years ago. It was just a funky little island. Had one phone. There were no cell phones, and it'd be a ramshackle restaurant on the beach. And then through the years, celebrities started coming, and that meant that paparazzi would show up. So one day, about 10 years ago, we were there with our families, and I just said to Marty, hey, let's go down to the beach. And he said, are you crazy? One of those paparazzi is going to get some embarrassing photo of us, and we'll be so humiliated. And I said, what are you talking about? We look fantastic. So we went down to the beach and we frolicked. You know, we sure did. I don't know what that means, but anyway. So we went back, and everything was fine. And then about 2 weeks later, we saw this photo in the National Enquirer. That's a good obit photo for either one of us. But seriously, yeah, so.
No, what were you saying?
I don't know.
No, but I think it's safe to say,
Yes.
I don't want to embarrass you, but I think it's safe to say that you've been responsible for some of the most memorable moments in show business for the past 40 years. Although right now I'm drawing a blank. I know they exist. You're very glad. Look, Steve, you can juggle, you perform magic, you play the banjo, and yet somehow you're famous. I don't know how it works. I mean, how odd has it been to be so famous for so long?
Well, that's an embarrassing question, but you know, we're here, okay. You know, odd things happen, and after a while you tend to only remember the kind of strange encounters. Like, for example, when you make a comedy movie, you test it for an audience before it's released to see how it's playing. Maybe you cut something, and so you know, I'll always sneak in the back and kind of listen to how the jokes are working. And so one day we screened this new movie, and a woman and her husband was coming out, and she saw me, and she came over and she said, "Oh, I loved this movie, and my husband loved it, and he hates you." And traveling around, you know, this actually happened right before COVID. I was in San Antonio, and it was the 4th of July. And I always walk around the town. For example, when I get to Clearwater early, I go to the art museum because it's the one place I know I won't run into Marty. And, so I'm walking around San Antonio in the morning, and it was the 4th of July, so everybody was at the parade. There was nobody. And I came around a corner, and there was like 3 guys in a storefront, and they're drinking it up pretty good. And it's 11 a.m. And this guy's singing incoherently. He goes, then I walk by and he goes, "Hey, Steve Martin." I realized he wasn't drunk, it was his style. And then, I don't know if this qualifies as a celebrity story, but my wife and I decided we're going to put a safe in our apartment in the library. And the thing about a safe is that you can't tell anybody. So I talked to the construction guy. I said, can you put a safe in our library and tell no one? And he said, absolutely. I put one in for Jerry Seinfeld down at his lake house. I waited a couple of months and I called Jerry Seinfeld. I said, hey, how's your safe down at your lake house? And he said, well, how's your new safe in your library?
But I find it interesting that, I think of us as kind of private people, and yet we've both written very revealing memoirs.
That's true. You talk about your family, I talk about my family. We don't do it on television. We only do it in front of 5,000 people. But you can buy, Marty's memoir is fantastic. You can buy it on Amazon. You won't, but... I talk about my parents. My father died when he was 83, and he had a very full life, but in his 60s he had a couple of strokes. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him what he can eat now. And it's a very strict menu, and it's vegetables with no sauce, and dried fish and that sort of thing. So now I'm taking him out to lunch. It's his first lunch after his stroke, the menu. And he's got the restaurant menu in one hand and the doctor menu in the other, and he's kind of cross-checking. And finally he says, oh, I'll just have the fettuccine Alfredo. But he had a good sense of humor. One day, he and I were going to take my nephew out and buy him a car. And my father was in real estate, so he was a good negotiator. So he's sitting across from the dealer, and my father slides in a note of what the final offer is, and the dealer says, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with this. My father said, you're not comfortable. You're not comfortable. I'm the one with the catheter in my weenie. My mother lived to be 91, and toward the end, very sad, she had a little bit of dementia, and which is really sad, and also occasionally hilarious. I'll tell you what I mean. I'm talking to her one day, and suddenly she stopped, and she said, "Where's Glenn?" That was my father. I said, "Well, he died 3 years ago." And she said, "Well, that explains all." Now I have a question for you, because you do something I don't.
No, sometimes you're entertaining. Oh, please finish your thought.
You do impressions, and I don't do impressions, because I don't need to. So... my question for you is, when you do an impression of someone, a celebrity, and then you run into them, is there conflict?
Well, hopefully you never run into them. That's the. But it's true when you create do an impersonation or create a new character, especially with a new character, you want to base it on someone you've met in your life to give it 3 dimensions. And in 1984-85, I was a cast member on Saturday Night Live, and the head of makeup that year was a woman named Miriam Siebert. And Miriam was the most offensive human being that you had ever met in your life. She always chain smoked. You could do that inside in 1985. And you'd sit in your chair and say, look at me. Don't squirm. Please don't squirm. Try to help me. Thanks. None of your features match. This is really tough for me. You're not pleasing visually. There, I've said it. Just a question, were you recently attacked by an ape? I don't mean to insult you about your looks, but I thought you knew, I'm sending my condolences to your mirror. And so and then you're insulted, and she's dabbing, and about 50 minutes I say, gee, Miriam, I look a little pale, don't I? And she says, I know that. You don't think I know that? I'm a makeup artist. I didn't know that. So that's it. And then about a month later, I'm writing a piece with Billy Crystal and Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer satirizing 60 Minutes. And I thought, well, I was going to play the defensive lawyer. The lawyer always represents the bad guy in those pieces. And we even had a name for him, Nathan III. But I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know how I should do it. And Billy Crystal said, why don't you do it as Miriam Siebert? He said, you do her behind her back all the time anyway. And I said, maybe she'll find out, He said, oh, she won't know. They never know, he said. So I said, okay, that's a good idea. I've even got the same brand of cigarettes that she smoked. But I put a wire down the middle of mine so as I smoked it, the ash would never fall off. Anyway, I go down to the set, and I forget that Miriam is there because, of course, she's the head of makeup, so of course she'd be there. So she's sitting there smoking like that. I'm now smoking like this. Harry Shearer is playing Mike Wallace, and he says, now, Mr. Thurn, you've already admitted your client was breaking the law at that point. And I say, I know that. You don't think I know that? I'm a lawyer. I would know that. And the director goes, cut. He's sweating, and Miriam says, I know that. You don't think I know that? I'm a lawyer. It was insane. And then every time, when you do a character at SNL and becomes popular, you're expected to do it again. And every time I